All right, the man of the hour, the man with the best hair in the space, the splicer and dicer. There is no one nicer.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's
Yo,
up? It's a great Tuesday. How are you doing this week, man?
I'm doing great. Doing freaking great.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it.
is it really Tuesday? I thought today was Wednesday,
Yeah, I
man.
thought
I'm
it
so
was Wednesday
Oh, it
backwards.
is
too.
Wednesday.
Oh,
It is
okay.
Wednesday.
Well,
We only do these on Wednesday.
I'm like, what?
maybe it's like Tuesday in Australia or something. No, that'd be Thursday.
Yeah. It's one of these days. It's hump day, and we're slap dab in the middle here. But
Oh
yeah, man,
man.
we're excited to chat. I'm glad we can talk a little bit about splicing to learn more. It's been a very interesting week for the Lightning Network, but for now, let's focus a little bit on splicing. I mean, Dusty, I've kind of followed and listened to like what's going on. Nowhere near as like privy and up to speed as you are with the subject matter, but for someone that's new, maybe if we're gonna kick this off, maybe take a minute or two and just describe what splicing is and like what benefit it brings to
Hell
Lightning.
yeah, yeah. Like splicing is one of these funny things where like the concept's quite simple, but it like unlocks a bunch of stuff. The core concept is said simply is just the ability to resize channels using on-chain. Into and out of on-chain stuff. But what it unlocks is pretty awesome. Like some of the things you can do is like this enables stuff like if you ever use the MUUN wallets, there's other wallets that do this where they try to maintain one balance that's both a Lightning balance and an on-chain balance, so users don't have to like have two of them and know what that means. But the current solutions are very, very expensive because now every Lightning transaction is both an on-chain and a Lightning one. And splicing enables the reverse of that, where you can have all of your funds in Lightning and then still make on-chain payments. And that's like one of the cool little like perks of splicing. But on the other side, the more like the kind of big company nuts and bones that are like big routing nodes, they constantly have liquidity challenges where they got to move liquidity from here to there, and they use lots of services like submarine swap services and stuff. And those services end up creating multiple Bitcoin transactions. Plus, you have to buy it through a marketplace, so that the costs end up being quite high for that, and it's not a very good long-term like sustainability solution. And splicing ends up being the most efficient way for them to move liquidity around as they need to, and they can do it with themselves by themselves, so they having to rely on any central authority or anything. And the other kind of weird thing that comes out of it is the splicing spec, because it requires the collaboration of two nodes anyway, you can start also doing this interactive transaction stuff where you can both do a splice at the same time. So let's say like, me and Nate have a channel and I want to like splice some funds out and Nate wants to splice some funds out or in or whatever. We can collaboratively do both of them at the same time, resulting in a single on-chain Bitcoin transaction. But then it doesn't have to stop there. Nate can like go to Vivek and then do the same thing with him. And Vivek can do it with someone else. And we can kind of chain these together and end up doing like as many splices as we want in a single Bitcoin transaction, as many that'll fit. So you end up with these kind of, they're a lot like a coin join, but they create like scaling and coin join kind of capabilities all at the same time. It's kind of a high level. Does that all make sense?
This is awesome because I think that the layman, when they hear splicing, they just think, oh, I could change the size of my Lightning channel. Like, that's cool. But you're just like talking about all these other like cool little things you can do with that concept that I don't think most people recognize. So I appreciate you just bringing those up because wasn't even thinking about that for the most part.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So just to kind of say it back, to make sure I heard it correct in layman's, is outside of just having one channel and you're like, yo, I want to add more Bitcoin to that and make it bigger. You also can keep your funds in Lightning, it sounds like, and then take some out also and remove for an on-chain transaction. So that's fascinating. Are there any like initial use cases where people do want that you're just kind of hearing through the grapevine that you maybe are able to expound upon a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I've had chats with some of the guys at the Breeze wallet, and I think Moon, on some of them on Twitter have been talking about it. Like, I'm pretty sure once splicing is out and stable and stuff, they'll start doing it. It'll kind of come later, though, because splicing has to come out, and then they have to upgrade their, basically build new wallet infrastructure for that to happen. I think what's going to come first is the liquidity management of big routing nodes because they have the immediate need. Like, you take, like, I'm blanking on the name. What's that company that does liquidity for El Salvador? Anyway, whatever. They have, like, they're paying tons of money into both the Loop service and the Magma service, and they're constantly moving stuff around. And those are like big companies, and they're going to, I think, adopt it first because it'll just make their business flow better and lower their costs. So like one of the perks that people will come first for the regular user is just cheaper lightning fees, right? You both have more likely routing payment success and for cheaper fees kind of thing. That'll come first, and then the wallets will kind of come down the road, I think.
Nate?
For like, yeah, for routing nodes, it's pretty cool because I like, as you know, Dusty, like we just like we just come up with all these ideas, but it's like if you want to open up a channel, you don't have to dedicate a certain amount of capital anymore before you know rather if a peer is worth having a bigger channel with, right? I can open up a 1 million sat channel with you and maybe make some payments out. And if those payments succeed through it, I'm like, cool. And then I could splice in another 5 million or 10 million sats into that channel, right?
100%. Yeah. And like the other cool thing about it, to add on to that, is these big lightning operators, they have to keep a pool of on-chain funds ready to go to open new channels with. But with splicing, you could keep all those funds in just whatever channels, like maybe low quality channels that you're going to close, just keep them open. And then when you want to open a new channel, you just splice funds out of the useless channel into a new one, into an open, all in the same go. So I think it'll help with liquidity reserve.
And unlike a submarine swap, I don't have to rely on peers succeeding the routing part of the spending out of the lightning channel, right? It's just an on-chain thing. Nobody can stop me, right?
Totally. You can do it all yourself, any third parties, whatever. The other thing that's kind of important to note is that with splicing, you can do this without closing the channel. So like if you wanted to say, it helps in two ways. One, if you want to close a channel, open a new one, you have to wait a long time for that channel close to go through and confirm. If you have pending HTLCs, that could be as long as a week or longer. Whereas with splicing, you can do it more quickly. And the other way is if you have, like, let's just say you open up like a small channel, 1 million sat channel, and it's like it's doing awesome. You're like, this channel is the shit. I want to make it bigger. With splicing, you can make it bigger without the channel ever going down. So there's no downtime for any of your sats anywhere in any of your channels, kind of thing. And I think for like a really good channel, you don't want to screw with it going down, right? You want to be able to like improve it while it's still running. That makes sense.
It does to me. Oh man, go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm not typically the one who's trying to think like an engineer because I am not an engineer in any way, shape, or form. But the thing I do think through is the routing side. And that's something I was going to bring up. And I'm glad you already shared it. Is whenever I was running my node, I would just see a couple of channels. They were just flying through with liquidity. And some of them would stay balanced incredibly well. And it just kind of makes you think, oh, if this channel is, 2 million sats or 5 million sats, what if we move it to 20 million? And that could just lead to even more throughput that you could not cater to before. Like I'm really interested to see statistics that come down the line when you can splice channels and add that additional value within that channel.
Yeah, it should be big.
And it's the savings too, right? Because closing and then opening a channel is 2 transactions, but splicing is just 1. So there's savings there.
Yeah, it's like the most efficient way possible to do these kind of operations.
So, all right, we're talking about all this great stuff. Everyone's just like shaking hands and kissing babies. It sounds incredible. Bitcoiners they always want to point out maybe the flaws, or there's like areas of resistance. Like what problems could it arise, or what type of resistance have you felt to this, if any?
I think like the splicing spec has been like 98% done for a while. And like there's a lot of in the Lightning protocol discussions about how to handle the last 2%. And that definitely takes up a lot of time. Like one of them is like there's this weird question of, let's just say me and Nate are doing a splice transaction, right? There has to be an order. One of us has to sign that splice first. You can't sign at the same time. And so like one of the big long debates, which has been, how do we determine signing order? I don't know if that's in line with your question or not.
I think that's interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Like Lisa and I kind of gone through it like pretty thoroughly, and we're definitely convinced that the way to do it is whoever's putting in the least amount of sats into the splice, like they should be the one that signs first, because there's not that much downside to signing first, but someone could potentially get you to sign first and then never sign and try to like grief you and try to like make your funds a little more locked up and kind of cluttered, hypothetically. But I think in practice it probably wouldn't happen, but this is one of the things that we like debate pretty thoroughly in the splicing spec chats.
That's interesting because there's two types of I mean there's more than two, but there's like the two that we're talking about is the kind of exploit or attack or whatever some jerk is trying to take your money in some way, right? We think about ways to jam up channels on Lightning all the time to make the close expiry, all that crap. But there's no really monetarily incentive. It's just in theory, some jerk could just make you annoyed for a period, right? Which is
Exactly,
a griefing
yeah.
attack, like you said.
Yeah, and like some of the liquidity providers, like this is kind of a bigger deal for them, because let's just say they, I don't know, have the 1,000 UTX lows laying around to like ready to be leased out by people. Like the Eclair guys come to mind. They're kind of the big ones because they have a service where you get their app and then they immediately will like open a channel to their app on your phone for you, right? And so if somebody wanted to say like grief Eclair, they could just make 1,000 accounts and try to open 1,000 splices with them and then cancel them all. And this is like a concern that Eclair has, right? And like Eclair, like they do have ways to get the UTXOs out. You can double spend them, you can do other things, but they want to keep their operation running as smoothly as possible. So it can be a bigger deal for the big guys, but I think in the end it all kind of works out.
That's a good point, though. I think the bigger guys would be the biggest targets in that world. That's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's kind of this category of thing where it's like they're not actual issues today. We're trying to look ahead and be like, what are some issues that we can design now to prevent being problems in the future?
I think in terms of a routing node, again, if you open a channel that's quite large, and I don't know how high quality of tools there are out there currently to derive your decision making on like who to open channels to outside of just leveraging Amboss and looking at what data is publicly available. It's not really as nuanced as I'm sure people would like. But say you open a channel that's big, you don't really get a lot of throughput and you think, man, I deployed a little too much capital here. Or let's say you only use maybe half of that capital. You could easily just pull a portion and then reallocate it somewhere else versus closing the entire channel. But yeah, I think this is going to provide a lot of value for node runners. Beyond that, Nate, what other questions or things did you want to point out?
I mean, I'm actually really curious if we rewind a little bit, Dusty. Like, I've known you for a few years now. Just can you talk about just like the path of like that you've been on, like on the splicing journey? Like, how did you decide this is something that you wanted to work on? Like, what's that story?
It's kind of a funny one. Like 2 years and change, the splicing spec dropped, and I've been following splicing for a while, and I thought it just made sense. It was cool, and I just read the headline, and I was like, oh, cool, splicing's here. And then I learned that it was not here. It was just the spec was written, and I was like, oh, well, okay. And wonder if I can do it. And then I just sort of started doing it basically because it's something I've been excited about for a while, and it's a good way to contribute to Lightning. I think. I think I didn't really anticipate how hard it would be. But I love a good challenge. It's been great.
Oh man, that's awesome. So is this going to be on Core Lightning only? Like, where are we looking at the next 3, 6, 12 months, sort of?
That's a good question. Like L&D's timeline tends to be pretty private. I know it's somewhere in their timeline. Core Lightning is going to get it first for sure, and then Eclair is going to do it second. And I think part of that's because they have that big liquidity providing service, and this is just so beneficial to that. And then I don't know when LDK will do it. I'm sure it's somewhere in their timeline. Would it be in like 6-9 months? I don't know. If I had to guess, probably not, but I'd have to ask them to really be sure. I mean, the thing is, like, once they start doing it, it'll take a while for them to develop it. It'll go a little faster because, if you have an existing implementation, like I've made with Core Lightning to reference, you don't run into these like, oh, this problem wasn't solved at all. How are we going to solve it kind of thing? I've already solved all those things. Like one that comes to mind is like, there was a problem in the spec where you have to take the existing funding transaction for the channel, and then you're signing it over to the new splicing channel, right? And there was actually no spot in the existing protocol to put a signature for a funding transaction like that. So we had to like go back to the spec and like add a special spot for it in the witness data kind of thing. So like all those things being like solved, I think will make their implementations go a bunch quicker, but it's hard to predict other people's timelines for things. They got their own priorities.
Right. But the hope is that we'll have this in all of our like someday, a few years from now or whatever, we'd have like this in our Thunder hubs or in our RTLs or whatever, like sort of interface that routing nodes are using.
100%. Yeah. I imagine it'd be faster than a few years. I don't know. Maybe I imagine Thunder Hub and RTL. I hope they would add it sooner than later because they will support Core Lightning, I believe now.
So I guess a side question there: if Core Lightning is if splicing is deployed on Core Lightning, live, whatever version, and they have a channel with someone running an LND node that doesn't have it at the time, can splicing still occur in a limited way, or is it totally unavailable at that point?
Yeah, it unfortunately wouldn't be available. You need both nodes involved in the splice to recognize splicing. To do, your immediate peers have to know about it. Now, like other peers across the network don't. Like, there's two elements here. One is the peer you're splicing with, because they have to sign off on the new transaction state. You need them to know what splicing is. But if you splice a channel, like older nodes that, like, say they haven't updated, which, with these latest bugs, I'm sure everybody's updated. With the older nodes, they would see it as a channel close and they would stop choosing it to route through. And we got a update through on the spec to change that property to basically delay what's considered a channel close by 12 blocks. And that should be in all of the nodes now. So the routing element of it is solved. So the main thing you want is, when you're splicing the channel, you want every other node of the network to think of your channel as still being alive. And that part we got going and should work today. If that answers your question.
Yep. I love it. I think it's really cool how there's like all these little like it's like here's the goal, and then like here's all these like weird little problems that we have to let you like kind of run into, right? Is that I can imagine that's a big part of your day-to-day work on this stuff.
It's totally how it is, exactly, yeah.
So this really gets my mind turning. Like, if you're able to use off-chain and on-chain Bitcoin within a channel, does this somehow blend cold storage within a Lightning node?
I mean, it can. I think, like, what does a better job of that is the VLS/Greenlight project, and this is this idea of like separating the seed. This is unrelated to splicing, but I think it interplays really well with splicing. What their project does is also in Core Lightning, is it separates the seed off the node. So you store your seed in something kind of like a hardware device, and it like sits in your closet at home. And what it does is, whenever the Lightning client needs to sign something, so sign something, it'll send the request to this device. This device will look at it and say, okay, is the thing I'm signing going to make me lose funds? If not, okay, I'll sign it. And then if it is going to make me lose funds, it requires a user to come over and approve the transaction, right? So you're doing withdrawal off your Lightning channel. You would need to walk over to it and be like, yeah, I approve that withdrawal, kind of thing. And this like it's a lot like a hardware wallet. It's got some differences. It's got to be online, but it brings it a lot closer to cold storage.
Okay, interesting. So does that mean, and Nate, you might be able to kind of help, both of you guys could probably answer this, but for people who are not technical, I know like whenever you create your own node or you spin up your own node, let's say an Umbrel or on Voltage or whatever, you've got your on-chain Bitcoin and then your Lightning Bitcoin. And what you just expressed, how it does separate the seed from the node, is this going to make selling liquidity in marketplaces quicker and more efficient just due to the accessibility of on-chain Bitcoin for market participants as well?
I think that splicing will, yeah. It's a separate concept from the seed setting stuff, though. But splicing definitely will do that.
That's cool. And it really makes me, what were you going to say, Nate?
No, go ahead.
It really makes me think, too, about how the liquidity markets in the future could work. Because let's say you did deploy all of your Bitcoin into your Lightning node and you see inefficient channels and you've identified they're not productive, but you have someone they want to buy on the open market, that inbound liquidity, you could very easily move those funds from one channel to the other. Like, there's a lot of automation features that could be built in and set with certain parameters with underperforming channels potentially to then immediately fulfill market orders, like let's say in Amboss or other liquidity markets.
That's a cool idea. I love it.
Totally. Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like the idea of like my channel's doing really good and my peer really, really likes me, so they want to buy more, right? Within the same channel. So I could just splice in more capital and they pay me.
I think I was just saying that, like, in that whole picture, I think splicing really greases the wheels to those liquidity providers and just gives them like really the most fine-grained control they can have over that stuff with the liquidity, which is really important for those services.
Yeah, that gets me really excited because I know that's a major problem that can be solved, while the demand's not there for the liquidity just yet, but there's a lot of liquidity that does want to be deployed. A solution like that is going to allow for rapid fulfillment and quicker orders. Because I remember being on Amboss, and whenever I was managing myself, I was having to set up Telegram alerts, and whenever someone bought it, I wasn't at my computer or near my phone for 24 hours and I missed my order. But being able to like set certain parameters and automations and just say, hey, fulfill this for me, I want to take care of these people, like that would be pretty game changing. I just think at scale that's going to be pretty impactful for a lot of people. So that's cool.
Hell yeah. Have you heard of liquidity ads?
I haven't used it. I've definitely heard of it.
Feels like it's related to this beautiful vision you have.
It's public knowledge, but core lightning is coming to voltage.
Let's go. Hell yeah.
Yeah, Q1 2023. We got a lot of questions about that this week. So Q1 2023 is the estimated time. So stand by. The guys are working super hard on it. As the marketing guy, I'm always pestering them, when CLN. So just know it is coming. Everyone stay pumped for that.
Yep, more options is good.
More options. Dusty, what else has you excited just with the advancements of Lightning? We can talk a little bit outside of splicing here now, but what's got you just really jazzed up about what's going to be happening over the next year? What are you pumped on?
I'm really excited about the kind of advances in trampolines. Probably the two things I'm excited about most are trampolines and the remote seed signing stuff. The trampolines originally were this idea that your phone currently, if it wants to do a Lightning payment, has to have an entire map of the Lightning network, which works today at Lightning Network's current size, but eventually it'll grow to be bigger, and then your phone won't be able to route that payment. And so the original trampoline idea was there's a node that advertises, hey, if you just route through me, I'll route it to the final destination for you. You don't have to know where it's going. I got my own map. I'll get it there for you. The idea is kind of advanced in some crazy ways where you can do some things where if you want to hide who the receiver is of something, the receiver can just say, hey, I want you to route through this trampoline, and then the sender doesn't even know where the receiver is in the network. And that gets some crazy privacy concerns. And then that kind of extended to a new idea I heard this year, which was, what if every node put a trampoline node in front of it, just all of them? And then it creates this plausible deniability of you don't know if this trampoline is just routing one hop to this guy or if it's routing who knows where. The privacy benefits from that kind of system are pretty cool. Trampolines would provide both a scaling of the network to the whole world, plus also these unexpected privacy benefits. I think that's pretty cool.
Dude, I'm so with you on that. So for those that don't know, the way that a traditional Lightning invoice can get decoded is it shows who generated the invoice, basically. It shows the public key, and you can reasonably assume that's going to be the final destination of the payment. There's been talk over the years. Trampoline's one of them. And then there was rendezvous routing when Connor was at Lightning Labs, was working on really hard. But since he left Lightning Labs, I haven't heard much on rendezvous routing, but it's essentially to obfuscate the final destination of a payment. And this can be really useful if somebody's trying to pay you, and for example, you don't want them to see what your node alias is, you don't want them to see what your node pub key is, you don't want them to see what your node balance is, you just want that money, and you want them to see the green check mark, and that's all that matters. And that's sort of the goal of that, right, Dustin?
Yeah, totally. And it feels like the kind of thing where some third awesome benefit's going to appear as it starts getting more implemented too. And I just got that gut feeling,
I'm a big proponent of that. One of the reasons why I run multiple nodes is because I want to receive payments, but I don't want to receive payments on some of my big ones. I don't want people to know what I'm running. So I'm really excited for that.
Hell yeah. I do think also the remote seed storage thing is definitely the underhyped, awesome thing coming to Lightning. And I think for, I don't know, a service like Voltage, it can make a lot of sense because someone could use Voltage to host their server, but then keep all the seeds themselves, self-sovereignly. And not have to if there's a server breach or whatever, not have to worry about their funds being stolen. I think that's actually pretty awesome.
There's a good chance that we are looking into that very closely.
Sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, splicing's. We're gonna go for it.
Good deal. Well, I'm curious, Dusty, how much does Lightning Network care about the rate hikes that happened today with the Fed chair?
Oh, they care about 6.15%, I think.
Lightning, Bitcoin, just keep building. Clown World's going to do Clown World things. Here, we can do some Q&A. We always love doing this here as we get closer to the end. Tarek, hey, what's up, man? Welcome up.
All good. Great listening to you guys. I've only been here for a while, but it really caught my attention now that you mentioned,
While he's coming up, I can just kind of ramble about splicing stuff. I got working on the code for a while, and I got it to a point where I got it in a PR on Core Lightning. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I'm really excited about that milestone. And if anybody's got expertise and would be interested, I'd love anybody who wants to go through and do some reviewing of that PR for me. That'd be sweet. I'm really excited about it.
So what is the need? What is the need of obfuscating, your address or having information about a certain address being not known, when we know that at the core of blockchain technology is the ability to publicly verify a transaction and know the source. So wouldn't that defy the logic or the reason why we're on blockchain in the first place?
Well, the Lightning Network doesn't use a blockchain. It uses the Bitcoin base layer as a way to secure the funds itself. But the Lightning channels don't use any sort of blockchain.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
I think it's kind of magical. Like, there's a lot of constraints on the blockchain that are necessarily there, and Lightning has kind of been this crazy way of putting together smart contracts to make a bunch of awesome things happen on top of the blockchain without ever corrupting the blockchain at all, which is kind of awesome. Like, just the ability to send payments instantly and have like settlement right away is huge, and like that was the big innovation that Lightning did over the blockchain. I think like you can start doing cool tricks of the trampoline privacy stuff without violating the number of sats out there. You can keep all the guarantees of the blockchain, and it's kind of like sort of the point of having a different layer. So there's no way Lightning could go back and corrupt the blockchain no matter what it did.
Right, because that actual cryptographic multi-sig contract is based in that immutable base layer.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
would there be a way if the two parties, for example, would never want to settle, for example, is there a possibility that there could be a creation of something beyond the signature? Let's say that there's not gonna be any resettling or channel closing for both parties. Is that a scenario that is feasible to start with?
Yeah, I think like the analogy I like to think of is like in this country, the United States, people are signing private contracts to each other all the time. And there's something like 40,000 judges in the United States. And you could imagine if judges had to be present for every contract that was ever written and signed, it would just never scale. We would no longer have like a functioning legal system in this country. And I think Lightning and the blockchain work in a similar way. Like if you think of the Bitcoin blockchain as like the judge layer, you only need to use it if there's some kind of contract breach, right? The fact that the contract can be enforced by the judge or by the Bitcoin blockchain system means that people will operate in accordance to that contract anyway. And this is kind of the magic trick that makes Lightning scale in the first place.
Great, thank you.
Great
That's a
question.
sick analogy.
Vivek, what's up?
What's up? Wanted to
Yo.
talk to Dusty about any potential SIGAG schemes with splicing, and basically if there's any research done where, there's definitely benefits to having more users participate in the splice, like you were suggesting.
Oh my
like
God, the benefits.
Any weight units and stuff like that. Yeah, go ahead.
The benefits will be huge. Like the moment we have a signature aggregation like proposal out there that's going through Bitcoin, I guarantee I'm going to go back to all the splicing stuff and make it use it, because that will make the scaling probabilities insane. Like, you can end up in a world where doing a splice on-chain transaction is cheaper than doing a regular on-chain transaction, and like that's going to be a beautiful world.
What would you need to wait for? Specifically, like Frost and Roast or Music 2? Like, what would be needed?
The cross input signature aggregation stuff would be needed. That stuff.
Oh, okay. All right. It's a ways out, but that's still cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be a ways out. I know someone at Blockchain released recently a half aggregation, a half cross input aggregation proposal, which that was an interesting new take on that. It sounds like people are working hard on making it happen. At some point, it'll come.
Yeah, I think Tim and Jonas put like their half egg thing. I don't know if it was a mailing list, but it's just been a while. They posted it to. They did a live coding session on YouTube and stuff like that in 2021.
Sweet. Yeah, and the point about Frost and stuff, like when we get Taproot channels going using Frost signatures, that'll make splicing also more efficient and also kind of more like secretive, right? Like then you could have a splice transaction where there's no indication on change that this is anything you do with Lightning, which I think will be pretty cool to think about as well.
And then with Roast, you can have like, I guess, that malicious peer that doesn't end that round. You can still have like a splice, like a alternative splice going.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the relationship between malicious Roast peers and like splicing and how to work out those details. That'll be fun to figure out.
It doesn't sound like the journey is going to end anytime soon.
No, I suppose not. Yeah. But it's great. I'm here for it. It's fucking awesome.
All right, cool. We got Graham who hopped up. He's our big dog at Voltage, our CEO. What's up, man?
Hey, yeah, I like to pretend. Sorry if you covered. I came in kind of at the second half of this, but from what I've researched on splicing, there's kind of the opportunity to do splicing in a few different ways of having kind of both nodes online and maybe the more standard splicing. But then is there a way to do kind of pre-signed splicing for like LSPs if like the end user is offline or something and still be able to like withdraw funds from the channel? Can you maybe talk about, is there some differences in types of splicing?
It's funny you mentioned that. That was just that was just being talked about in the Lightning Dev mailing list. Yeah, you can totally free-sign splices, and like that's a thing I think T-Bast is like very interested in for his company. And I haven't thought through all the implications of it. One of the things is the splice transaction will compete with the force close transactions. So like I imagine probably the most, you have to think about that carefully, right? But there's definitely a way to do it. One of the things you want to do, I think, like, so in the situation of like if you have like a user who has a phone that might go offline, as long as you re-sign the splice every time you process a payment, then all the problems are just solved, right? And I think that's probably going to be the main use case, and it's a great idea because Eclair, they ended up with a bunch of people doing that. They got the phone app, they opened up channels with them, and then they just disappeared. And crawling back those funds was like, even if you're trying to get the funds back to the user because they're gone, it's really hard to do it. And pre-signing this stuff is a really great way to do it. The one challenge there that remains is what fee rate you sign it with. And there's been a dizzying amount of proposals about how to handle fee rates for this kind of stuff. One of them that's just kind of like brute force and simple is you just sign like 5 different splices at different fee rates, which you can totally do. And yeah, I think anyway, that's kind of all technical stuff. But you were asking like, will splicing solve that use case? I think it definitely will, and I think it's probably one of the reasons that Claire's so excited about implementing it next.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and that's something that I think that's really interesting to be able. You have to kind of like update your signatures on the splice transaction as well as like channel state on each payment or something. But so that's really interesting to think about. But that's really good to know as well. I think, for a lot of those big LSPs with like mobile end users, that's going to be a really big deal.
100%, yeah. And the reason you have to update the Spice transaction is because if you do a new regular commitment transaction to process payments, you have to hand over your revocation keys, and those are the same revocation keys on the Spice transaction. So you kind of have to update them all as one unit. That's actually one of the big parts of the spec change is updating the commit transaction to also conclude signature commitments for the splices and stuff. Bit of a tangent, but hopefully I answered your question.
Sweet.
It's all very exciting in any case.
Any other questions or anything, guys? I see a lot of fun, familiar faces down there, so don't be shy. Feel free. But while we're waiting, Dusty, anything else you want to share? Anything you haven't mentioned that's just worth mentioning?
Man, let's think. I feel like there's always stuff going on. The splicing stuff is just progressing. I'm really trying to get. I'm trying to get a developer only release going. Probably in the one after this next Core Lightning release, and this one would be like shouldn't be used for splicing with any like real funds, but kind of the idea of it is that people can use it to start forming integrations with whatever other tools they wanted to use with. And then hopefully the release after that, after like more testing and stuff, we can get it into an experimental phase where like, you can use it with caution kind of thing. So it all should be coming quite soon.
So for those that don't know, you have already done a splice transaction though, right? So it's not like this is upcoming, but you've sort of proven that, it can be done and it has been done in your environment.
100%. Yeah. I did a splice transaction a while ago on chain. Basically at the first moment I could, I was like, I'm going to do this. I got to be the first. And I did it on chain. And then since then, obviously my own local machine, I run a reg test. I'm doing splices like constantly all the time as I'm improving things. But the thing that's important before it's released to people is that all of the validation is done completely correctly. Right? You don't want to create any vector where like funds can get stolen from. So like that's kind of the bulk of the work really is going very thoroughly and making sure everything matches all the spec and the checks and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of the bulk of the work that I'm in now is just making sure it's all as definitely as safe as possible. And the Lightning in particular, I think Core Lightning's process of reviewing this stuff to make sure it's that way is incredibly thorough and time consuming and awesome. It's super important to do it correctly.
Awesome. Well, we won't keep you longer than we have to. We appreciate you taking some time, man. Your energy is contagious. It was fun meeting you and eating some Mexican food at BitBlock Boom. But keep up the great work, and we'll love to have an update once this stuff goes fully live and the whole world gets to embrace this awesome technology.
Hell yeah, man! It was great running into you at that conference.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate it, and everyone, We'll be back next Wednesday. Y'all have a great rest of your week. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Dusty. Appreciate it, buddy. I'll see you soon.
Cheers. Thanks. Take care.